Good afternoon and welcome to the July 8th Subcommittee on Testing Accommodations and Eligibility meeting. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. I'm calling this meeting to order. Devin, can you please call roll call?
Bolton,
Here.
Burns,
Here.
Lawrence not present, Masiwala not present, Montgomery,
Sorry, here.
Reyna,
Here.
Reyes,
Here.
Silva Guzman.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. We have 5 members appearing remotely today. As required by the Bagley-Keene Act Open Meeting Act, members appearing remotely must appear visibly on camera, except if a member is unable to appear by video due to connectivity challenges. If that is the case, please provide an explanation. Members should also raise their hands when leaving and returning to the meeting if they will be absent for more than 5 minutes. First up on the agenda is the call for public comment. Before we begin public comment, I would like to remind everyone that under the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act, public comments must pertain to items that are on the agenda or be related to matters that are within the jurisdiction of this agency. Specifically, the subcommittee exercises oversight of testing accommodations and eligibility matters, including those for the California bar exam and the first-year law students exam. The subcommittee does not have authority over attorney discipline, and there are no attorney discipline matters on the agenda for today's meeting. Members of the public wishing to comment were encouraged to submit written comments prior to the meeting to ensure that the subcommittee would have time to consider these comments. The subcommittee has received and read all written public comments, and we thank you for that. To facilitate hearing as many members of the public as possible, I encourage you not to repeat points that were made by previous speakers. Given that only 1 hour has been allotted for the subcommittee meeting and the subcommittee must also reserve time for closed session, public comment will be limited to 2 minutes per speaker. For those who are participating by Zoom video, you should have a function for virtually raising your hand. It's a hand icon and should appear at the bottom center of your screen. If you wish to address the subcommittee, please click on the hand icon now, and the committee coordinator will call on you in the order that the hands are raised. For those who are participating by phone, you may virtually raise your hand by pressing *9. That's the star key and then the number 9. Doing so will alert staff that you would like to make a comment, and the committee coordinator will call on you and open your microphone so that you can address the subcommittee. Staff will have an on-screen countdown timer visible to all attendees during the duration of your public comment. The timer's 2-minute countdown will begin as soon as you start your comment. The on-screen timer will flash throughout the final 10 seconds. We will start public comment with people who are in person, starting with anyone at one of our remote locations. Then we will move to those who signed up in advance. Subcommittee members, please advise whether there are any members of the public at your location who wish to provide public comment. Okay, seeing none, then we can move on to those who signed up in advance.
We had one member of the public sign up for advance phone number ending in 9356, who I do not see in attendance.
Okay, then we can proceed forward to any raised hands.
And we do not have any raised hands.
Okay, with that understanding, this concludes the public comment period. We will now move on to the open session oral report. Next on the agenda is the chair's report. As part of the revised rules of the State Bar pertaining to testing accommodations, Rule 4.88E states that all requests for review shall be delegated to a subcommittee. Accordingly, the Subcommittee on Testing Accommodations and Eligibility will now decide all testing accommodation requests for review. Thank you for meeting today to ensure these reviews are conducted timely. The next item on our agenda is approval of the June 3rd, 2026 Subcommittee on Testing Accommodations and Eligibility meeting open session minutes. Do we have any questions or are there any revisions to the minutes? Okay, if no comments or questions, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the minutes. Okay, and a second?
Second, this is Vince.
Okay, we have Dr. Bolton who made the motion and Vince Ray is making the second. And Devin, if you could call roll.
Bolton,
No.
Burns,
Yes.
Lawrence not present, Masiwala not present, Montgomery,
Yes.
Reyna,
Yes.
Reyes,
Yes.
Silva Guzman.
Yes,
With 6 ayes and 0 nays, the motion carries.
thank you. At this time, the subcommittee will move to closed session pursuant to Business and Professions Code Section 6026.7C3 through 4 and Government Code Section 11126C1. Subcommittee members joining remotely, please use the closed session link Christina sent this morning. Thank you. Hello, there is no reportable action from closed session. Meeting business has concluded. Is there any further business anyone would like to raise? Okay, seeing none, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for your time today.
Thank you.